Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously kinetic, 900-year journey right through the history of tennis. We're going to trace how a game that started out in stone courtyards totally transformed into the multi-million-dollar global phenomenon we know today. And we'll look at how pioneering athletes from India fundamentally changed the sport forever.
Okay, let's dive into this, because when you really stop and think about it, the evolution here is just absolutely bizarre. I mean, on one end of the timeline, you've got medieval monks literally smacking stuffed cloth balls against monastery walls. And on the other end, we've got modern pros blasting 220 km/h serves on global television. So how exactly do we get from point A to point B?
Section 1. From Monasteries to Wimbledon, the Global Origins of the Game.
So, we're going to zoom out first and look at where this whole thing started. We actually have to travel way back to 12th century France to find the foundational DNA of tennis. The earliest form of the game was known as jeu de paume, which literally translates to game of the palm. Players in French monasteries and royal courts would hit this heavy, cloth-stuffed leather ball back and forth across a rope. Now, what's really interesting about this is that in the beginning, they didn't even use rackets. They were hitting that heavy ball with their bare hands. Just imagine the physical toll of that bare-handed monastic play. Honestly, it's no wonder they eventually figured out wooden paddles and, much later down the line, sheep gut rackets. Over the centuries, the game naturally morphed. By the 1530s, King Henry VIII was this massive enthusiast of real tennis, playing on these crazy indoor courts with complex rules about bouncing balls off walls and slanted roofs. But the real shift, the game changer, happened in the 1870s. In 1873, Major Walter Clopton Wingfield actually patented an outdoor version called lawn tennis. And just 4 years later, in 1877, boom, the first Wimbledon championship. 22 men entered, and a guy named Spencer Gore won it all on standardized rectangular grass courts using flannel-covered rubber balls. Now, that 1877 Wimbledon established a lot of the scoring system we still use today, which brings us to one of the most fascinating quirks of the whole sport. Have you ever wondered why tennis scoring goes 15, 30, 40? Well, historians actually trace this right back to the physical pacing of those old 45-foot jeu de paume courts. Basically, if you won the first point, you moved forward 15 feet to serve. Win the second, you move forward another 15 feet to the 30-foot mark. Win the third, and you move forward 10 feet to the 40-foot mark. It is such an incredible artifact of history, and it's literally hidden right in plain sight in every single modern match.
Section 2. Enter Mohammad Saleem, the pioneer of Indian tennis.
Let's move to and see how this builds by zooming in on a very specific, absolutely crucial chapter. In the 1880s, British Army and civilian officers brought lawn tennis over to India. Now, initially, this was heavily meant to enforce colonial class barriers, right? It was a leisure activity strictly for the British elite, but the native population systematically claimed and mastered it. The big breakthrough happened at the 1915 Punjab Championship in Lahore. A heavily favored British player, Lewis Dean, was fresh off a huge win in Calcutta and fully expected to just sweep the tournament. Instead, this relatively unknown 23-year-old Punjabi boy named Mohammad Saleem defeated Dean in an effortless, straight-sets victory, 6-3, 6-2, 6-3. It's this perfect, classic underdog story where an athlete claims a colonial sport for his own nation.
And Saleem wasn't just winning locally, he was a sweeping genius on the global stage, too. Big Bill Tilden, who's widely considered one of the greatest tennis players to ever live, gave Saleem a massive credibility boost. He explicitly called Saleem the best baseline player in the world. I mean, coming from Tilden, that was a legendary validation of Saleem's talent. The pure kinetic energy of Saleem's game was on full display at the 1921 Davis Cup. This was the debut of India's national team. They traveled all the way to Paris to play a very formidable French team on their favored surface, clay. Saleem anchored the team and just completely dismantled France's #1 player, three-time French Championships finalist Jean-Pierre Samazolf, in straight sets. The Indian team breezed past the shell-shocked French to reach the semifinals, which firmly put India on the international tennis map. Just 3 years later, at the 1924 Paris Olympics, India sent its very first tennis delegation. Saleem was there, obviously, but this event also marked a massive milestone for women's sports. The team included Nora Margaret Pauli, who became the first female athlete to represent India at any Olympic Games. She reached the third round in singles, establishing this absolutely vital, century-long legacy for Indian women in tennis.
Section 3. The Open Era Revolution. Opening the gates to the pros.
Now, we need to zoom back out to the global stage for a second, because to really understand the modern titans of the sport, we have to talk about a massive structural shift that totally redefined tennis in the late 20th century. For decades, there was this strict, almost absurd division in the sport. During the amateur era, if you turned professional to actually make a living, you were straight up banned from prestigious Grand Slam tournaments like Wimbledon. You had to go play for underground pay and separate, less visible events. But that all ended in 1968 with the dawn of the Open Era. So the crucial point is, the Open Era eliminated that amateur-professional divide. Amateurs and pros could finally compete together. And without that single rule change, the global sponsorships, the TV rights, and the multi-million-dollar spectacles we watch today, they simply wouldn't exist.
By 1972, the players finally took control of their own destinies. The Association of Tennis Professionals, the ATP, was formed that year to protect men's player interests and introduce unified computer rankings. And the very next year, in 1973, the iconic Billie Jean King founded the Women's Tennis Association, the WTA. This effectively finalized the modern professional structure of the game, completely setting the stage for athletes to become global icons.
Section 4. India's global tennis superstars. The modern era of dominance.
So let's bring that global Open Era timeline and the Indian tennis timeline together to see how India absolutely exploded on the international circuit. And this brilliantly illustrates a generational baton pass of sporting brilliance. In the 50s and 60s, you had Ramanathan Krishnan making back-to-back Wimbledon semifinals. Then in the 70s and 80s, Vijay Amritraj claimed 15 ATP singles titles. That incredible run laid the foundation for the explosive mid-1990s, where Leander Paes and Mahesh Bhupathi totally ushered in a new age. And today, we've got modern titans like Sania Mirza and Rohan Bopanna carrying that torch.
Speaking of the late 90s, India sparked a legitimate global doubles revolution. It actually started with singles glory, when Leander Paes won the singles bronze at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. That was India's first individual Olympic medal in 44 years. The very next year, Mahesh Bhupathi became the first Indian ever to win a Grand Slam title at the 1997 French Open mixed doubles. Together, they absolutely gripped the globe. Paes would go on to win an astounding 18 Grand Slam titles across doubles and mixed doubles. The sheer scale of their dominance was pretty much unmatched.
And the legacy of those pioneers naturally evolved into today's modern titans. Sania Mirza became a massive global superstar, hitting world #1 in doubles, winning 6 Grand Slams, and single-handedly revolutionizing women's tennis in India. And then you have the sheer athletic grit of Rohan Bopanna. I mean, he won the 2024 Australian Open doubles to become the oldest world #1 in ATP history at the age of 43. These athletes took Mohammed Slim's legacy from 1915 and elevated it to the absolute pinnacle of modern sports.
From 12th century French monks playing with their bare hands, to Slim stunning the French in Paris, all the way to modern icons conquering the Open Era, tennis really is a sport of constant, fascinating reinvention. The equipment itself has evolved from wood and natural gut to aerospace-grade carbon fiber. The game is faster, stronger, and definitely more global than ever before. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. As this sport continues to evolve at lightning speed, who will be the next pioneer to step onto the court and redefine this 900-year history? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new perspective the very next time you sit down to watch a match.
Welcome back to The Explainer. All right, we're diving right back into our look at the incredible 900-year evolution of tennis. If you caught part 1, you know we covered how this went from a medieval French courtyard game to an absolute global sensation. Well, Today we're zeroing in on the modern high-tech era. We're talking about how these advanced, scientifically engineered conditions set the absolute perfect stage for some of the greatest legends the sport has literally ever seen. The game today is explosive, it's punishing, and it is way faster than ever before. To conquer it, you basically have to be a super athlete. So let's figure out exactly how they do it. To really grasp that super athlete level, just think about this number for a second. 14. Now, in the modern Open era of tennis, winning just one major tournament pretty much guarantees your place in the history books, right? But Rafael Nadal, it is honestly wild to think that he won the French Open 14 times between 2005 and 2022.
No way around it. That is absolutely the most dominant run any player has ever had at a single major tournament. And this mind-boggling stat, it perfectly illustrates the extreme physical demands of the modern game, which we are definitely going to unpack today.
But hey, before we completely unpack that, let's consider an equally staggering number, 41. We're talking about a 41-match winning streak. This absolutely incredible statistic belongs to the main focus of our explainer today, the barrier-breaking, historic career of India's tennis superstar, Sania Mirza. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. First up, the modern baseline era. Then dominating the clay court, followed by the rise of Sania Mirza, mastering the doubles game, world number 1, and finally, a lasting legacy. Section 1, the modern baseline era, a game transformed. So to truly appreciate today's legends, we first kind of have to understand how the mechanics of the sport evolved to let them shine in the first place. Because tennis today, it does not look like the tennis of the 1970s. The game has totally shifted. See, through the 60s and into the 80s, especially on those super fast surfaces like grass, the serve and volley tactic was literally everything. Guys like John McEnroe and Pete Sampras, they would serve, rush the net immediately, and just put the ball away. Bam, done. But then, things changed. Manufacturers started slowing down the court surfaces. Why? Well, partly to give television audiences longer, more exciting rallies. And at the very same time, racket technology got a massive upgrade, making passing shots way easier to pull off. The result? Rushing the net became incredibly risky, and baseline dominance completely took over. Today, the absolute masters of the game, think Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz, they build their whole strategy around explosive, highly consistent ground strokes from the back of the court. If you've watched a match lately, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, what's really interesting here is comparing this old-school 19th century text on lawn tennis strategy, where they talk about these rigid bases of operation for volleying or ground strokes, and juxtaposing that with today's explosive game. I mean, it's night and day. Today, players are wielding carbon fiber and graphite composite frames. They're using these crazy polyester strings that literally snap back on contact, which lets them swing incredibly fast while still keeping control. You combine that with massive first serves regularly topping 200 kilometers per hour, and it's crystal clear. Modern tennis is just a completely different beast, and it demands entirely new types of legends. Section 2, dominating the clay court, the ultimate physical test. So because the rules for court surfaces were never standardized globally, these players have to constantly adapt. You've got Wimbledon keeping the grass, the US and Australian Opens eventually settling on hard courts, but Roland Garros, they kept the red clay. And this wild diversity in surfaces is exactly why achieving a career Grand Slam is so incredibly tough. To get a career Grand Slam, you have to win all 4 major tournaments over the course of your career. Very, very few have actually pulled this off. We're talking absolute icons like Andre Agassi, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal. So why is it so rare? Well, just imagine trying to sprint on ice versus sprinting on deep sand. Every single surface gives you a completely different bounce and demands a totally different playing style. You literally have to be a master of all terrains. And let me tell you, no terrain is more grueling than the red clay of the French Open. Unlike that lightning-fast grass at Wimbledon, clay courts are remarkably slow. They reward extreme topspin and unbelievable lung-busting physical endurance way more than just raw explosive power. And this highly specific environment, it perfectly set the stage for Rafael Nadal's unprecedented dominance. By using those modern polyester strings we talked about to generate terrifying amounts of topspin, Nadal basically turned the French Open into his personal fortress, locking down those 14 historic titles. He completely mastered the physical test of the modern baseline era. All right, Section 3, Rise of Sania Mirza, India's tennis superstar. Now, physical endurance isn't just about outlasting the person across the net in a single match. It's also about outlasting the massive toll this sport takes on your body over an entire career. Born in Mumbai back in 1986 to a really sports-loving family, her dad was actually a sports journalist. Sania Mirza grew up in Hyderabad and almost immediately showed immense promise. She burst onto the scene with incredible force, eventually climbing all the way to world number 27 in singles. Now, put that into perspective. Hitting world number 27 was the highest rank ever achieved by an Indian female player in 3 decades. But then severe recurring wrist injuries threatened to take it all away. For a lot of players, that's it. That's the end of the road. But for Mirza, it forced this brilliant strategic pivot that would ultimately define her entire historic legacy. Which brings us to Section 4, Mastering the Doubles Game, the Santina era. Since she couldn't really sustain the brutal, grinding demands of the singles circuit with those wrist injuries, Mirza pivoted entirely to doubles. And wow, did it pay off. She transformed from a formidable singles contender into an absolute, undeniable doubles powerhouse. The real turning point? That happened in March 2015 when she teamed up with the Swiss tennis legend Martina Hingis. The fans absolutely loved it, instantly dubbing them Santina. And as Hingis herself put it, from the start we hit it off. Our games complement each other. That instantaneous chemistry, pairing Mirza's blistering ground strokes with Hingis's tactical brilliance at the net, it completely revolutionized both of their careers. And man, once they clicked, they were completely unstoppable. Let's move along the timeline here and see how this builds, because this chemistry sparked that mind-blowing 41-match winning streak we mentioned earlier. It's one of the longest in tennis history. First, they captured the 2015 Wimbledon title, which made Mirza the first Indian to ever win a women's doubles major. Then they swept the 2015 US Open without dropping a single set the entire tournament. Literally not a single set. And they topped it all off by completing a stunning Grand Slam hat-trick, taking home the 2016 Australian Open. Section 5. World number 1, unprecedented heights. When you actually look at the records she set during this era, the numbers just speak for themselves. Over the course of her career, Mirza claimed a massive total of 6 Grand Slam major titles. And while 3 of those were in women's doubles with Hingis, we can't forget that the other 3 were in mixed doubles. She won the 2009 Australian Open and the 2012 French Open alongside fellow Indian legend Mahesh Bhupathi, and then she took the 2014 US Open with Brazil's Bruno Soares. She totally proved she could adapt her game and win at the highest possible level on hard courts, on grass, and on clay, no matter who was standing right there next to her. And thanks to that unbelievable consistency, on April 13, 2015, Sania Mirza achieved the ultimate milestone. She became the world number 1 in doubles. But here's the thing, she didn't just reach the top. It's almost like she set up camp there. She held that number 1 spot for an astonishing 91 weeks. Just think about that. That is nearly 21 straight months sitting at the absolute pinnacle of the sport. It's the 6th highest streak in the Open era, and it cemented her status as absolute, undeniable tennis royalty.
Section 6. A lasting legacy. Beyond the court.
Sania Mirza officially retired in 2023, but, her story matters so much to the global sports landscape, and its impact goes way beyond the white lines of the tennis court. To just quickly summarize her monumental off-court accolades, she walked away with 43 WTA doubles titles and 14 medals at major multi-sport events. Back home in India, she was honored with the nation's absolute highest sporting and civilian awards, including the Arjuna Award, the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna, and the Padma Bhushan. But she didn't stop there. She used her massive platform for social good, stepping up as a UN Women's Goodwill Ambassador for South Asia. And in her autobiography, Ace Against Odds, she really opens up about the immense pressure of not just conquering physical hurdles, but of actually shattering societal norms to pave the way for a whole new generation of athletes. She didn't just play the game, guys. She quite literally changed the culture around it. So what does this all mean? The crucial point to take away from this explainer is that tennis is a sport of constant, absolutely unrelenting evolution. We've gone from 12th century monks hitting cloth balls with their bare hands, all the way to players wielding carbon fiber rackets and launching 220 km/h serves. It really begs the question, when a simple game evolves over 900 years to create super athletes like Nadal, Djokovic, and Mirza, what boundaries will the legends of the next century break? Keep that in mind the next time you step onto a court or sit down to watch a match. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and as always, keep learning.